The year was 2347, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Concord for nearly 100 years. During that time, humans had worked very hard to show the galaxy that they were peaceful, friendly, and willing to follow every rule. They signed every treaty. They attended every meeting. They smiled at species who looked down on them and called them primitive. Ambassador had spent 15 years of her life making sure that humanity was seen as the good newcomers, the species that would never cause trouble. Everything changed on a quiet Tuesday morning when a transmission arrived at Earth Command. Captain Vance was a simple man who had joined the Space Navy because he loved exploring new worlds. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, was an old exploration vessel that had seen better days, and his crew of 42 men and women spent most of their time mapping distant stars and collecting rock samples. It was boring work, but like boring. Boring meant safe. His communications officer was a young woman named Maria Santos. She was 26 years old and had only been on the ship for 8 months. Maria was good at her job, but she had never seen real trouble before. That changed when her console started beeping with an incoming signal. "Captain, I am picking up something strange," Maria said, her fingers moving across her screen. "It looks like a distress signal, but it is very weak." Walked over to her station and looked at the data. The signal was coming from a moon called 7B, where a human colony named New Haven had been established 30 years ago. New Haven was home to 40,000 people, mostly farmers and miners who had wanted a quiet life away from the crowded cities of Earth. "Can you clean up the signal?" asked. Maria worked for several minutes, and slowly the static cleared. What came through made her gasp and cover her mouth with her hand. The transmission showed video footage of New Haven. Buildings were burning, bodies lay in the streets, and walking among the destruction were soldiers that recognized immediately. They were a species that humanity had been trading with for decades. They were tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. They were known as proud warriors, but they had always been civil to humans. Now they were shooting civilians in the streets of New Haven. "Get me more," said, his voice barely a whisper. "Get me everything." Over the next several hours, Maria and the rest of the crew pieced together what had happened. They had arrived at New Haven 3 days ago with a fleet of military ships. They had demanded that the colonists leave immediately because the moon contained deposits of a rare mineral called. When the colony's governor, a man named Peter, asked for time to organize an evacuation, they opened fire. They did not just attack the government buildings or the mining facilities. They attacked everything: schools, hospitals, homes. The footage showed soldiers going door to door, dragging families into the streets and executing them. Children were not spared. The elderly were not spared. No one was spared. 40,000 human beings were murdered in less than 72 hours. Vance had been a captain for 12 years. He had seen difficult things during his service. He had lost crew members to accidents and diseases, but nothing had prepared him for this. He sat in his command chair and stared at the screen, unable to speak or move for nearly an hour. Finally, he gave the order: "Send everything to Earth Command, maximum priority, mark it for the President's eyes only." The transmission traveled across space at faster than light speed and arrived at Earth within 6 hours. It was received by a young officer named Tony Bradley, who watched the first 30 seconds of footage before running to his commander's office. Within an hour, the information had reached the desk of President Samuel Grant. Samuel was 63 years old and had been president for 4 years. He was a calm man who believed strongly in diplomacy and peaceful solutions. He had spent his entire political career arguing that humanity should set an example for the galaxy by being the most civilized species in existence. When he watched the footage from New Haven, he was silent for a very long time. His chief advisor, a woman named, stood beside him, had known Samuel for 20 years, and she had never seen him look the way he did now. His hands were shaking, his jaw was tight, and in his eyes there was something cold and hard that she had never seen before. "Call an emergency session of the United Earth Council," Samuel said. "Everyone, no exceptions." The council met 4 hours later in a large chamber beneath the city of Geneva. Representatives from every nation on Earth were present, along with military commanders, scientists, and diplomats. The room fell completely silent as the footage from New Haven played on the massive screen at the front of the chamber. Some of the representatives cried, others looked away. A few became sick and had to leave the room. When the footage ended, no one spoke for several minutes. Finally, President Samuel Grant stood up and walked to the podium. He looked out at the assembled leaders of humanity and spoke in a voice that was steady but filled with barely controlled anger. "The Galactic Concord has already issued a statement about New Haven," he said. "They have classified it as a regional dispute outside their jurisdiction. They will not intervene. They will not punish They expect us to file a formal complaint and accept whatever token gesture is offered." He paused and looked around the room. "For 100 years, we have played by their rules. We have been civil. We have been patient. We have smiled at species who called us primitive. We have accepted insults and unfair treatment because we wanted to prove that humanity had evolved beyond our violent past." Samuel placed both hands on the podium and leaned forward. 40,000 of our people are dead. Men, women, and children who did nothing wrong except live on a moon that the wanted. They were murdered because someone decided that humans were easier to kill than negotiate with. His voice grew harder. "The galaxy thinks we are soft. They think our civility is weakness. They think that we will accept this massacre and move on because that is what civilized species do." He stood up straight and squared his shoulders. "They are wrong. Today, humanity stops playing nice. Today, the galaxy learns what happens when you push humans too far. Today, we show them exactly why our ancestors conquered a planet that tried to kill them at every turn." The room erupted in applause, watched her old friend, and realized that she was seeing a side of humanity that the galaxy had never encountered. The polite newcomers were about to become something else entirely. And the Dominion had no idea what was coming for them. The galaxy had a very wrong idea about humanity. For 100 years, they had seen only one side of the human species. They saw the diplomats who smiled and shook hands. They saw the traders who offered fair deals and never cheated. They saw the scientists who shared their discoveries freely with anyone who asked. The galaxy looked at humans and saw a young, peaceful species that preferred talking to fighting. What they did not see was the history. Humans had not become the dominant species on Earth by being gentle. They had survived ice ages, famines, plagues, and countless wars against each other. They had built weapons capable of destroying their entire planet many times over. They had split the atom and walked on their moon within the same century. When humanity finally looked up at the stars and began to explore, they brought with them thousands of years of experience in one particular area. War. Admiral Moore was 61 years old and had served in the United Earth Navy for 40 years. She had gray hair, sharp blue eyes, and a reputation for being the tactical mind in human history. When the news of New Haven reached her, she was already at Luna Station, the massive military base hidden on the far side of Earth's moon. Most species in the galaxy did not even know Luna Station existed. That was exactly how humanity wanted it. Stood before a room full of fleet commanders and senior officers. Behind her, holographic displays showed the full extent of Earth's military capabilities, things that had been kept secret for a century. The officers in the room had spent their careers preparing for a day that they hoped would never come. Now that day was here. "For 100 years, we have maintained a defensive posture," said. "We built our ships to look weaker than they really are. We hid our best weapons in storage facilities deep underground. We trained our soldiers in secret and told the galaxy that we had only a small peacekeeping force." She pressed a button on her remote, and the display changed to show the ruins of New Haven. They have made that strategy obsolete. Commander Gregory Price was in charge of the first expeditionary fleet. He was a large man with dark skin and a deep voice. He had been one of the loudest voices arguing that humanity should reveal its true strength years ago. Now, he felt no satisfaction in being proven right. "Admiral, they have a substantial military force," Gregory said. "Our intelligence says they have over 300 warships ready for combat. If we reveal ourselves now, they might attack before we are ready." Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Commander, let me show you something." The display changed again. This time it showed schematics and technical specifications for weapon systems that most people in the room had never seen. There were directed energy cannons that could cut through shields like they were made of paper. There was stealth technology so advanced that human ships could fly within touching distance of an enemy without being detected. There were missiles that could think for themselves and find the weakest points in any defense. And then there was something called the Hammer Protocol. The Hammer Protocol is a coordinated strike system that links every ship in our fleet together, explained. When activated, our ships can attack hundreds of targets simultaneously with perfect timing. We tested it in simulations against a fleet 10 times the size of the Navy. She paused. The simulations ended in 4 minutes. The room was silent. Even Gregory, who had always pushed for a stronger military, looked shocked by what he was seeing. "We have been preparing for this possibility since the day we first made contact with alien life," continued. "Not because we wanted war, but because we knew that someday, somewhere, someone would mistake our preference for peace as an inability to fight." On Earth, the population was also learning the truth about their own species. President Samuel Grant appeared on every screen on the planet to deliver a message that would change everything. "My fellow humans," Samuel began, "you have all seen the footage from New Haven. You know what the Dominion did to 40,000 of our brothers and sisters. What you do not know is that Earth has the power to respond." He explained, in simple terms, that humanity had been hiding its true military strength for a century. He told them about the secret bases, the advanced weapons, and the fleet of warships that was larger and more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen. He told them that this secrecy had been necessary to protect humanity during its early years in the galactic community. "They believe we are weak," Samuel said. "They believe that we will file a complaint with the Galactic Conquered and then accept whatever meaningless punishment is handed down. They believe that killing 40,000 humans has no real consequences." His voice grew harder. "They are about to learn how wrong they are." The reaction across Earth was immediate and powerful. Recruiting stations that had been nearly empty for decades suddenly had lines of people waiting to join. Young men and women who had never thought about military service were signing up by the thousands. Factories that had been making consumer products began switching to military production. Scientists who had been working on peaceful research started adapting their work for weapons. In the city of Chicago, a young man named Danny watched the president's speech with his family. Danny was 22 years old and had been working at a grocery store while trying to figure out what to do with his life. When the speech ended, he stood up and told his parents that he was going to enlist. His mother cried. His father shook his hand. His younger sister hugged him and made him promise to come back safely. Scenes like this were happening all over the planet. Humanity was waking up from a century of pretending to be something they were not. They had shown the galaxy their kindness, their diplomacy, and their willingness to cooperate. Now they would show something else. Admiral Moore received reports from every sector of Earth's military. Ships were being brought out of storage and prepared for combat. Weapons that had only existed on paper were being manufactured at incredible speed. Soldiers who had trained in secret for years were finally being called to active duty. Within 1 week, Humanity had assembled the most powerful military force in galactic history, and they had done it without anyone in the galaxy even knowing it was happening. Looked at the tactical display showing all of Earth's assets and felt a mixture of pride and sadness. She had spent her entire life hoping this day would never come. She had trained for war while praying for peace. Now the time for prayer was over. "Send a message to the High Command," she ordered. "Tell them they have 1 week to surrender everyone responsible for the New Haven massacre. Tell them that failure to comply will result in consequences they cannot imagine." The message was sent. The countdown had begun, and the galaxy was about to discover what humans were really capable of when someone hurt their family. High Commander Al was the most powerful military leader in the Dominion. He was 8 feet tall with gray skin covered in ceremonial scars that showed his many victories in battle. He had led the armies for 30 years and had never lost a single war. When his assistant brought him the message from Earth, he read it twice and then started laughing. "These humans think they can threaten us," Al said, tossing the message onto his desk. "They are the weakest species in the Conquered. They have no real military. They spend all their time talking and making friends." He waved his 4 arms dismissively. "Ignore them. They will make noise for a few weeks, file some complaints, and then accept reality." His assistant, a younger named looked uncertain. "Sir, should we not at least increase our border patrols, just in case?" Al shook his head. "The humans have perhaps 50 ships capable of combat. We have 300. Even if they were foolish enough to attack, we would crush them in days." He turned back to his work. "Now leave me. I have more important things to worry about than empty threats from a species of cowards." 3 days later, Al received a report that made him stop laughing. Captain Daniel Cooper was 38 years old and had been commanding warships since he was 25. His current ship was called the Silent Fury, a destroyer that looked ordinary from the outside but contained technology that would have seemed like magic to most species in the galaxy. Daniel had spent his entire career preparing for a mission he hoped would never happen. Now he was leading a fleet of 12 ships into space. "All ships report status," Daniel said from his command chair. One by one, the other captains confirmed that they were ready. Their ships had been running silent for 3 days, using stealth technology that made them invisible to every type of sensor they possessed. They had crossed into enemy territory without triggering a single alarm. Daniel's mission was simple but important. He was not there to start a war. He was there to send a message. The patrol fleet consisted of 20 warships guarding the border. They were experienced crews who had been defending this section of space for years. They had never seen anything approach them without being detected first. The first sign of trouble came when Lieutenant Collins, the sensor officer on the flagship, noticed something strange on her screen. "Commander, I am detecting some kind of interference," said. "It almost looks like there is something out there, but our sensors say the space is empty." The commander, a veteran named N, walked over to look at her screen. "Run a diagnostic. It is probably just equipment malfunction." Before could respond, 12 human ships appeared out of nowhere, surrounding the fleet in a perfect circle. They had dropped their stealth systems at a distance of less than 1,000 meters, well within weapons range. The ships had no time to raise shields or power weapons. Daniel Cooper's voice came through on an open channel. "Vessels, this is Captain Daniel Cooper of the United Earth Navy. Do not attempt to power your weapons. Do not attempt to move. Any hostile action will be met with immediate destruction." N stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The human ships had appeared from empty space like ghosts. They were inside his defense perimeter, inside his weapons range, and he had never seen them coming. "This is impossible," he whispered. On the Silent Fury, Daniel's weapons officer confirmed that all enemy ships were locked. "Captain, we have firing solutions on every vessel. One command and they are gone." Daniel nodded but did not give the order to fire. Instead, he continued speaking to the fleet. "We are not here to destroy you. We are here to deliver a message. Transmit everything you see today to your high command. Tell them that this is what Earth is capable of. Tell them that we gave you a chance to surrender the war criminals. Tell them that if they do not comply, we will return." He paused, letting the silence stretch for several seconds. "And next time, we will not be so gentle." The human ships powered targeted electromagnetic pulses that disabled the weapons and engines without causing any casualties. Then, just as quickly as they had appeared, the 12 ships vanished back into stealth mode, leaving 20 crippled warships drifting helplessly in space. The footage of what happened reached High Commander Al within hours. He watched it 5 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. Human ships had appeared from nowhere, disabled an entire patrol fleet without firing a single lethal shot, and disappeared without a trace. His best crews had been completely helpless. "How is this possible?" Al demanded. "Our intelligence said the humans had primitive technology. Our spies told us they had no real weapons." His intelligence chief, a nervous named L, had no answers. "Sir, it appears that our intelligence was wrong. The humans have been hiding their true capabilities." For the first time in 30 years, Al felt something he had not experienced since he was young. He felt afraid. But fear quickly turned to anger. They were warriors. They did not surrender to threats. They did not bow to intimidation. Al decided that the humans needed to be taught a lesson. "Order a full military mobilization," he commanded. "I want every ship we have assembled at the border within 5 days. 300 warships against a dozen human vessels. We will show them what happens when you threaten the Dominion." The order went out across space. Ships were recalled from patrol routes and training exercises. Soldiers were pulled from leave and sent to their stations. Within 4 days, the largest fleet in centuries was gathered at the border, ready to crush the human upstarts. Admiral Moore received the intelligence report at Luna Station. She studied the tactical display showing 300 warships massed in attack formation and nodded slowly. "They are doing exactly what we expected," she said, "gathering all their forces in one place, making a big show of strength." She turned to her communications officer. "It is time. Activate the Hammer Protocol." Across human space, ships that had been waiting in silence received their orders. 200 vessels began moving simultaneously, coordinating their approach through quantum-linked computers that allowed them to act as one unified force. The fleet never saw them coming. In a series of perfectly timed strikes lasting less than 4 minutes, human forces hit every major military installation in 3 star systems. They did not destroy anything. They did not kill anyone. They simply disabled every ship, every station, and every weapons platform they could reach. When the High Command finally understood what was happening, it was already over. Their entire border defense network had been shut down without a single shot being fired in return. Admiral Moore's voice broadcast across space. "This is your final warning. Surrender the war criminals responsible for the New Haven massacre. There will not be another courtesy. The next time we come, we will not be so careful about preserving your lives." High Commander Al sat in his command center, surrounded by reports of disabled ships and destroyed weapons platforms. His mighty fleet had been rendered helpless by an enemy they had never even seen. The humans had proven that they could destroy the entire military whenever they wanted. And they had chosen to show mercy instead. That fact terrified Al more than anything else, because mercy could be withdrawn at any moment. The Galactic Concord was the closest thing the galaxy had to a government. It was a collection of over 200 species who had agreed to follow certain rules in exchange for trade rights and mutual protection. The Concord had been around for thousands of years and had survived countless conflicts between its members, but nothing had prepared it for what was happening now. Ambassador had represented humanity at the Concord for 15 years. She was 52 years old with silver hair and a calm voice that had served her well in countless negotiations. She had spent her career building bridges between species, finding common ground, and proving that humans were worthy of their place in the galactic community. Today, she was not here to build bridges. The emergency session had been called 3 days after the Hammer Protocol demonstration. Representatives from every major species were present, packed into a massive chamber that could hold thousands of beings. The room buzzed with nervous conversation as walked to the central podium. The representative N was already there. He was one of Al's most trusted advisors and had been sent to plead the case before the Concord. When he saw approaching, he stood up and pointed one of his 4 arms at her. This human woman represents a species that has committed acts of war against the Dominion, N announced loudly. We demand that the Conquered intervene and stop this unprovoked aggression immediately. Waited until the chamber fell silent before she spoke. Her voice was steady, but there was steel underneath the calm surface. For 100 years, humanity has been a model member of this Concord. We have followed every protocol. We have respected every treaty. We have bent over backward to prove ourselves worthy of membership in this galactic community. She paused and looked around the room. And when 40,000 of our people were slaughtered by this body ruled it a regional dispute outside their jurisdiction. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Many of the representatives had seen the footage from New Haven, but hearing a human speak about it directly was different. N tried to interrupt. The situation at 7B was a military operation conducted for legitimate resource purposes. The humans who died were unfortunately in the way. Turned to face him directly. In the way, you murdered 40,000 civilians for a mining claim. You burned children alive in their schools. You executed families in the streets and broadcast the massacre as entertainment for your population. Her voice rose slightly. And you thought we would simply accept it because we have always been the polite ones. She turned back to address the full assembly. Let me be very clear about something. We do not need the Concord's permission to defend our people. We do not need your approval to seek justice for our murdered families. We came here today as a courtesy to inform you of what is happening and why. Her eyes swept the room, meeting the gazes of representatives from dozens of species. Because unlike we still believe in civilization. We still believe in rules and laws and basic decency. But make no mistake, we will not allow those beliefs to be used as weapons against us. We will not let our preference for peace be mistaken for inability to wage war. The chamber erupted in noise as representatives shouted questions and demands, stood calmly at the podium, waiting for the chaos to die down. Back in space, High Commander Al was facing a crisis. His military had been humiliated. His ships had been disabled without being able to fight back. His intelligence had been proven completely wrong about human capabilities. And now the Galactic Concord was debating whether to impose sanctions on the instead of the humans. Al was a proud warrior who had never lost a battle. The thought of surrendering to anyone, especially a species he had considered weak and pathetic, was unbearable. He decided that if the humans wanted war, he would give them war. Prepare a strike fleet, he ordered. 50 of our fastest ships. We will attack one of their colonies before they can react. When human civilians start dying, they will come to the negotiating table. His advisors looked at each other nervously. Sir, the humans have already demonstrated that they can see our ships coming. Perhaps we should reconsider. Al slammed his fist on the table. I will not be intimidated by tricks and technology. There have been warriors for 10,000 years. We will not surrender to these newcomers. The strike fleet launched within hours, heading for a human colony called Haven's Rest that was home to 80,000 people. Al was certain that the threat to civilians would force Earth to negotiate. He was wrong. Commander Gregory Price received the intelligence about the incoming fleet while his ships were conducting patrols in the region. He had 12 vessels under his command, facing 50 warships. The numbers were not in his favor. But numbers were not everything. Gregory positioned his fleet in the path of the attack and broadcast a message to the incoming ships. Vessels, this is Commander Gregory Price of the United Earth Navy. You are approaching a protected human colony. Turn back now, or we will be forced to engage with lethal force. The commander, a veteran named N, laughed at the message. 12 ships against 50. Human, you are either very brave or very stupid. Gregory's response was calm. We gave thee every opportunity to resolve this peacefully. We showed you what we could do. We gave you warnings. You chose to ignore all of it. He paused. This is your final chance. Turn back now. And ordered his fleet to continue forward. He was confident that superior numbers would overcome any technological advantage the humans might have. The battle lasted 12 minutes. The human ships moved like nothing they had ever seen. They appeared and disappeared, striking from unexpected angles and vanishing before they could return fire. Their weapons cut through shields as if they did not exist. Their defensive systems stopped every shot that was fired at them. Of the 50 warships that entered the battle, only 3 survived. They were allowed to retreat, carrying footage of the destruction back to the. Gregory broadcast one final message to the fleeing ships. Tell your leaders that this is what happens when you target our civilians. We gave you every chance. We were patient. We were merciful. You chose to continue down this path. His voice hardened. The next time a ship threatens a human colony, there will be no survivors to carry messages home. The footage of the battle spread quickly. The population watched in horror as their mighty warships were destroyed by a much smaller force. The myth of military superiority, which had been built over 10,000 years, was shattered in 12 minutes. Protests erupted in major cities. Citizens demanded to know why their government had started a war with a species that could destroy them so easily. Military officers began questioning Al's leadership. Politicians who had supported the New Haven massacre suddenly started claiming they had always opposed it. High Commander Al sat alone in his command center, watching the tactical display that showed his defeated fleet limping home. He had gambled everything on the belief that humans were weak, and he had lost. For the first time in his life, Al understood that he was not facing a species that could be intimidated or bullied. He was facing a species that had chosen to be peaceful, chosen to be diplomatic, chosen to follow rules and treat others with respect. And that same species had also chosen, for a very long time, to hide exactly how dangerous they could be when pushed. Now the hiding was over, and they would have to face the consequences of what they had done. 3 weeks after the massacre at New Haven, the Dominion surrendered unconditionally. High Commander Al was arrested by his own officers and handed over to human custody, along with 47 other military leaders who had been directly involved in the genocide. The government issued a formal apology to Earth and agreed to pay reparations to the families of every victim. The trials were held on a neutral space station, broadcast live across the entire galaxy. Every species watched as the commanders were presented with evidence of their crimes, video footage, survivor testimonies, communication records showing that the massacre had been planned weeks in advance. The trials were fair. The defendants had lawyers. They were allowed to present their own evidence and make their own arguments. Humanity could have executed them immediately, but they chose instead to show the galaxy how justice should work. Every defendant was convicted. Every sentence was carried out. And through it all, humanity demonstrated that their commitment to civilization was real, not just words used to hide weakness. President Samuel Grant traveled to 7B for the dedication of a memorial to the victims of New Haven. The colony had been rebuilt, and new settlers had arrived to continue the work that the original colonists had begun. Where 40,000 people had died, a new community was rising from the ashes. The memorial was a wall of polished black stone that stretched for nearly a mile. Every name of every victim was carved into the surface, from the oldest to the youngest. Samuel walked along the wall, reading names and thinking about the families that had been destroyed. When he reached the central plaza, he turned to face the cameras that would broadcast his words across the galaxy. "We did not want this war," Samuel began. "We spent 100 years trying to prove that humanity had moved beyond our violent past. We believed that if we showed the galaxy our better nature, we would be treated with the same respect we offered others." He paused and placed his hand on the memorial wall. "We were naive." He turned to face the cameras directly. "Let this be a lesson to any species that looks at humanity and sees weakness in our civility. Our preference for peace is not cowardice. Our respect for rules is not submission. And our restraint is not inability." His voice grew stronger. "We will always choose diplomacy first. We will always seek peaceful solutions. We will always try to resolve conflicts through negotiation and compromise. But threaten our people, harm our families, murder our children, and you will discover the truth about humanity." Samuel looked up at the stars above. "Our ancestors survived ice ages by working together. They built civilizations in the harshest environments on Earth. They split the atom and walked on the moon. They created the most beautiful art and the most devastating weapons in their planet's history. We carry all of that inside us: the poet and the warrior, the diplomat and the soldier, the hand extended in friendship and the fist raised in defense." He lowered his gaze back to the cameras. "We showed you the hand for 100 years. Now you have seen the fist. Remember both, and choose wisely which one you want to face." Ambassador was promoted to a new position, Director of the Office of Galactic Relations. Her first act was to propose a major change to the Galactic Concord's charter. The new provision would create real mechanisms for preventing and punishing genocide, with actual enforcement capability instead of empty words. The proposal passed unanimously. Not a single species voted against it. Not a single species abstained. Many of the representatives who voted yes did so because they genuinely believed in justice and protection for all peoples. But others voted yes because they had seen what humanity could do, and they wanted to make sure they were never on the receiving end of that power. Admiral Moore retired from active command 6 months after the war ended. She had spent her entire career preparing for a conflict she hoped would never come, and now that it was over, she was tired. She handed over command of the fleet to younger officers and returned to Earth to spend time with her. But the fleet she had built remained. The weapons she had developed stayed in storage, ready to be used if needed. The training programs she had established continued to produce the finest soldiers in the galaxy. Humanity's secret was out, but that did not mean they had become any less prepared. Captain Vance, the man who had first discovered the massacre, was given command of a new exploration vessel. The ship was named New Haven in honor of the colony that had been destroyed. Its mission was peaceful exploration and humanitarian assistance, a symbol of what humanity preferred to do with its power. Stood on the bridge of his new ship as it launched from Earth orbit. His crew was young and eager, excited to explore the galaxy and help species in need. They represented the best of humanity, the idealists and dreamers who believed that the universe could be a better place, but also knew that in the weapons lockers throughout the ship, there were tools of war that could destroy anything that threatened them. Humanity had not forgotten how to fight. They had simply chosen to put those skills aside until they were needed. On the rebuilt colony of New Haven Memorial, a plaque was installed at the entrance to the central plaza. It bore a message that would be read by visitors for generations to come. Here 40,000 humans lived and died. Their memory reminds us why we reach for the stars with hope in our hearts, and why we stand ready to defend that hope with everything we have. We are humanity. We choose peace. We believe in civilization. We extend our hand in friendship to all who would take it. But we will never choose submission, and we will never forget what happens when someone mistakes our kindness for weakness. The young man named Danny, who had enlisted after watching the president's speech, served with distinction in the Navy for 30 years. He eventually became a captain himself, commanding a ship that patrolled the borders of human space. He never had to fire a weapon in anger. The galaxy had learned its lesson. His younger sister became a teacher on New Haven Memorial, educating children about history and the importance of standing up for what is right. She taught them that humanity was proud of being peaceful and diplomatic. She also taught them that peace without the ability to defend it was not really peace at all. The galaxy changed after the New Haven War. Species that had looked down on humanity began treating them with respect. Trade agreements became more fair. Diplomatic negotiations included human voices that were actually listened to. And whenever a conflict arose somewhere in the galaxy, other species found themselves asking the same question. What would the humans do? Usually the answer was to seek peace, to negotiate, to find common ground. Humanity had not changed who they were. They still preferred talking to fighting. They still believed in civilization and rules and basic decency. But everyone also remembered what happened when those principles were violated. Everyone remembered the Hammer Protocol and the battle where 50 ships fell in 12 minutes. Everyone remembered that the polite newcomers had been hiding the most powerful military in galactic history. Humanity had shown the galaxy both sides of their nature, the gentle hand and the iron fist, the diplomat and the warrior, the species that preferred peace and the species that would never accept submission. It was a lesson that no one in the galaxy ever forgot. And in all the centuries that followed, no species ever made the mistake of attacking human civilians again, because they all knew with absolute certainty what would happen if they did. The newcomers had earned their place among the stars, not by being the strongest or the most aggressive, but by being exactly what they had always been, a species that chose to be good while never forgetting how to be dangerous. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, and that was their warning.